This is what's called a stop and waste valve or a stop and drain valve. I'm installing this on the main water line going into the house. Because we only have wood heat for our source of heat, this valve allows me to shut the water off if we were to ever go out of town right in the middle of winter. This valve not only shuts the water off, but it also allows the water to drain back down. The idea is we could open up everything in the house and let the water drain out. Now there's a little more to that when it comes to winterizing a plumbing system, but this is an important piece of the puzzle. I will add a little bit of gravel underneath this to give the water a place to go, but this is one of these valves that will likely not get used very often. Because we've chosen to use our wood-burning stove for our source of heat, I hope that we're always around when we do have those cold snaps. Because I wouldn't want to take a chance at anything freezing inside the house, but this stop and waste valve allows us to at least drain as much down as we could. Now I'm a very visual person, so I'm laying out the exact dimensions of the bathroom. By doing it this way, I can figure out just how I'm going to plumb this. There's a number of different ways that I could have plumbed this, but I have a variety of fittings left over that I'm trying to use up somewhere along the way. I'll rough this in a way where I can get it outside the house and run it around and tie it into the main line. Before I pour the concrete, I'm going to have this inspected, so what I've got to do is get this roughed in, wait for the inspection, and then I'll backfill it and compact the dirt again. The inspection requires at least an 8-foot head of water pressure. I chose to just dig this by hand versus bringing the excavator down here and making a much bigger trench than necessary, but man, is this clay hard. This stuff is sticky, yet brittle when it dries out, and just hard as can be. Now I'm trying to keep the 3-inch main line up as high in the slab as I can. That way, as I come out of the house, install a set of cleanouts, and go around the front, that I don't end up with transition issues between different heights of the main lines. So by leaving it up as high as I can, that'll guarantee that I don't have any issues like that. Now by using the paint, I'm marking where the main line is going to go through the concrete, and I'm digging a little pocket to shove the pipe into. I will wrap this with foam, and then when the concrete's poured, all I have to do is dig out around it and connect a fitting to it and keep going. Now I need to make sure that I have fall while making sure that the toilet flange is level. When I first started training to be a plumber, I learned the plumbing code of ethics, which is basically everything goes downhill, payday's Friday, and don't bite your nails. Now there's a little bit more to it than just that, but really there's a lot of truth in the statement, especially the don't bite your nails point. Depending on the size of the pipe, there's a certain amount of fall required. I always give it a little bit more if I can help it. I'm roughing in the bathtub. Once I backfill and compact, I will put what's called a tub box around the 2-inch line coming up out of the ground to ensure that I've got enough play to get the tub tied in correctly. By the way, a 2-inch line is not required for the tub, but again, it was fittings that I happen to have, so it's a little bit overkill. This is the riser that I put on for the inspection. I'll fill this full of water. Once I pass the inspection, I'll drain it out, and then I'll cut this back down to where it's just above grade. But the plumbing's done. One of my big concerns is the transition between this new addition and the house. So in order to guarantee that not only the concrete doesn't pull away from the house, but also that the transition between the bedrooms and the front room or the pantry and the front room, I'm going to remove the windows and I'm going to cut out the opening so I can make sure that the two concrete foundations line up perfectly. One of the steps to guaranteeing that the concrete doesn't ever pull away from the house is doweling or pinning the slab. And basically what it consists of is what I'm doing here. Drilling into the slab, putting in 2-foot pieces of rebar, and wiring that rebar off to the existing rebar in the foundation. This is just going to guarantee that the two slabs never separate. I also pinned the front slab on the front porch, which in most cases guys don't really do, but I wanted to do that. Now I'm using tie wire to tie all the rebar together. So rather than buying rebar chairs or little plastic spacers that go under the rebar, I just went and found a bunch of rocks that will lift the rebar up off the slab enough to get concrete underneath it. As we pour the concrete, we will also lift the rebar just a little bit to ensure that we get just as much underneath as on top. I'm going to reuse these windows on the bedroom and also on the utility room, so I don't want to damage the windows if possible. So I took my time, worked my way around breaking the caulking free, and then I also had to go inside and cut the expanding foam that I used around it. Because the pad at the back door will actually be 4 inches lower than this slab, I'm not going to cut the back door in now. I don't need to do that. I have to get this slab poured before I can pour the slab at the back door because the transitions require that the form be out of the way. I'm trying to cut this in a way where I can reuse as much of the lumber as possible. I obviously had to pull some wire out of the way, but because I haven't finished the outlets, it wasn't that big of a deal. The rough opening on all the interior doors is 34 inches by 82 inches. This allows me to put a 32 by 80 door in there with a little bit of play. The first opening goes into the bathroom. This second opening will go into the bedroom. Then there will be one more opening going into the pantry. There's already a header over the top of the window, but I did compromise some of the structure, so I went ahead and put another header right back in there. This is going to end up being an interior wall. So I'm just throwing the OSB back up and it'll actually end up getting covered with drywall. By cutting out these sill plates and cutting the bolts off, this is going to guarantee that the transition between the rooms is perfect. This is the third door that's going right into the pantry. The pantry will end up being 10 feet by 10 feet. Now that's an awful big pantry for most families, but the truth is, as much canning, as much food prep, different things that we plan on doing, there's nothing wrong with having a big pantry in my opinion. This is all 3 rough openings. Everything's done. Assuming I get my plumbing passed tomorrow morning by the inspector, we'll pour concrete on Saturday.